Something rolling. This is our first coffee hour conversation in 18 months that has been live. So anyway, it's a good way to start out. And just thank you for your whole weekend and giving us so much time. So it was good. People loved being with you, and sounds like it was a really inspirational time all around.
Loved it. Thank you.
So Becca Stevens, Good Shepherd, welcome. Just a little introduction as to who you are. This is, you're on Wikipedia. I don't know if you know that or not. You can
It's probably the other Becca Stevens that's in the band.
No, there is another one too.
Yeah.
There's another one too.
Because I have people who say, I saw that you were playing the fiddle, and I was like, that's not me.
That's not me. I know. Look at the picture, right?
Yeah.
Well, Becca is president and CEO of Thistle Farms. I call you a force for compassion in the church and an advocate for women, especially those caught in a life of prostitution and trafficking and addiction. You founded Magdalene in 1997, and that's a 2-year residential program for former prostitutes overcoming addiction and wanting to restart their lives. In 2001, you started Thistle Farms, which you heard about this morning. That was a wonderful story, which employs the same group of women to make home and body products sold in stores like Whole Foods or Thistle Farms Online or right here at Good Shepherd too, right?
Yes, please.
Yes. And in 2013, Thistle Farms opened a cafe employing survivors of prostitution, trafficking, and addictions as baristas. Mm-hmm. Great. Becca is an Episcopal priest, author of many books, most recently Practically Divine, and the women of our parish enjoyed their time with you this weekend. So welcome, Becca Stevens.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us a little bit, for some of us, maybe you're in Community Cafe, or those who are online who didn't hear or weren't here this morning, tell us a little bit about Thistle Farms and just how they get going.
Thistle Farms is really a community of women who are all about freedom, joy, prosperity, all the good things in this world, but especially about love. It's housing, it's jobs, it's lifelong sisterhood. We started in Nashville, we grew around the country, and now we have global partners. So it's truly a global movement for women's freedom.
Awesome. Question for you. In your recent book, Practically Divine, you talk about love and that experience is 9/10 of love. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to quote you to you, which I said, never quote me to me whenever although I'm not an author, but still in a sermon or whatever. So experience is 9/10 of love, you write. The senses of the beholder transform information into compassionate experiences that are holy. And as I read that, I was like, there is a lot there. Can you just unpack that for us? Like, what was
well,
the sense
it comes from the idea of possession is 9/10 of the law, right? That's what the kind of play on that whole thing is, that love is not just a theory, love is not just a theology, love is not just poetry and music. It's this idea of how we experience all of those things. And so what I've come to understand is that it is in the transformation through people, their experience together, through the divine, that experience of it is how we feel love and how we offer it to each other. I mean, truly, it's not like you can pass a law, everyone must love each other, done. And no one feels like, oh my gosh, I feel so loved because that law's been passed. That feels amazing. But it's this idea of when there is this engagement in this way that we are offering that to one another, it's like, that is so loving. I feel that, and I feel grateful, and I feel excited, or I feel touched, or I'm, all of those things is how we literally embody it and experience it and share it with each other.
You write that you wanted to do the work of healing from the inside out, and that begins with a safe home. And there's a book by Jen Pollock Michelle, and it's called Keeping Place, and it's about home. So I just thought I'd share a couple of her quotes and just get your response to it. She writes, "Home represents humanity's most visceral ache and our oldest desire. Mm-hmm. From the Garden of Eden to the New Jerusalem, We are hardwired for place and for permanence, for rest and refuge, for presence and protection. She goes on to say that our God is a homemaking God. And I was just thinking about the heart of your ministry. To me, I hear about home. And I'm just wondering about that as something we all connect to regardless of our place of living, and how that might work in your ministry with the women who are part of Thistle Farms and what you're trying to offer. I assume it's more than just shelter.
I love that. I really do. I love that quote too. And what my mind went to immediately was the image I saw. I think it was on Katie Couric's feed where I get all my news. But it showed, the bombing of a high-rise house in Kiev, or right outside of Kiev today, and about people hitting your home. You know what I mean? And just that image, like in all the different images, when you see that, it's just like, it's so, it's defilement, it's just great sorrow, and that's the place, that you rest, literally, that you hold it together. And for me, in my life, it was always that I thought, why is it that we build these beautiful churches and cathedrals and we build really crappy shelters? If we do it for justice, it has to be on the cheap for some reason. But what would it do to transform the whole church if we built our shelters like cathedrals? We made our homes the things we're offering people in love and justice, that they would be worthy of a theology of love. And that's how I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be like really small, safe places that were beautiful, where women could remember how valuable and beautiful they are, and that they can dwell in that space. And to me, the word sanctuary is one of the most beautiful words there is. So that's how we set it up. Said, if women can come and really find home that is beautiful and safe, and they have the time and the space and the resources, they can be heroic in their story. I think sometimes we get this idea that we're saving people or that we have to be the hero. And really, people just need people to be good hosts and let them be the hero of their own story. And we just offer nice, safe space with access to the things that people need out of their home. And then things are transformative.
Part of our outreach is working with Community First Village, and they create sort of tiny homes. They just have, but they also believe that homelessness is a family issue, which, you think about, like, we all run into hard times. We'd have perhaps someone to call in or, find shelter. And for whatever reasons, those relationships are not there. So to create community first and a place of belonging, and then the home is there.
And for a lot of the women, the home has never been an option. They've never had safety of home. And we have so many people who've been run away from foster homes that weren't safe, while they're still in grade school. We have people whose first traffickers are related to them in the home. We have generational addiction issues. So, we've had women who've come in, it's their first Christmas. It's not like they're going back and getting a second chance. It's like this part of the learning is what home means. And for me, it takes a long time for people to feel safe in it.
Feel at home.
Yeah. Doris said to me, Doris, who's out there selling, said, just this morning while we were sharing breakfast, she said, I never sleep well the first night no matter where I am. I keep the lights on, I keep the TV on, I don't feel safe. We're in a hotel, it's not like but there's that thing of like, it's still, there's so much trauma around home that it takes a while.
One of the stories I heard about, and I imagine this is pretty common for the residents who are moving into the tiny homes, is that they sleep on the floor for the first couple weeks, until they can kind of feel okay about being in the bed. And I think about that as like levels of trust and shifting over into, should I let myself be open to home? Someone could take it away, right? Or whatever it is, that whatever process. But that to me said a lot. Like, they have a bed there, but I need to sleep on the floor for a while until I'm ready to be in the bed. Like, I'm just thinking about that as like levels of being in a place where there is for home, you know? I mean, I'm wondering about that that you must have seen stories and...
We had one woman who, it was just a couple nights, I don't know about a couple weeks, but the first couple nights she spent in the bathtub because the bed was so unsafe. I mean, a lot of times the reason you don't sleep in a bed is because it's a place of violence, not because you haven't had a bed and you don't feel comfortable in it, but you've been violated. That's one of the main places of violation. So for us, it's, like we would never, ever take used beds. I would never take a used bed. And the whole idea is having a new start and a safe, and you make it. You literally make it, and you decide what it looks like, what the comforter is, how it is, because there is a lot of trauma around beds.
Oh, that's powerful. You talk about love welcomes in that program. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I'm thinking in particular the weaving and the life jackets.
Yeah, and it keeps growing and changing. That project has been a really great learning curve for me. It started in 2017. We went over to Greece to work with women who were survivors of the Syrian war when everybody was doing refugee work. So, they're saying, 150,000 people have already left Ukraine? And the truth is that refugees and human trafficking are very, very close tied, and young, poor women are the most vulnerable. People with money are less vulnerable to trafficking as refugees versus people who are going to be stuck in camps now till whenever. But it was so heartbreaking watching everybody come over on the boats. Y'all remember that from Syria and the life jackets and all that. So we wanted to start an enterprise working with women who were just there. And we wanted to weave the life vests and the blankets that they received. The life vests they had to buy to cross the sea, and then the vests they got, the blankets they got when they landed from the UNHRC. And so we just wanted to weave them into a welcome mats. And we started with 9 women, and the women organized themselves. They came together. They basically organized the camp and started getting transportation for the camp. The whole idea that all the data shows is if you invest in women, you can heal communities. But when you rape women, you can kill communities. That's just violence destroys, and investment really heals for especially women. And the group of women coming together is about safety, that you're much safer if you're doing it as a community of women. It went great. People Magazine did a story on it. We sold a ton of them, started calling churches to see if they would put the mats out as the altar cloth for a while to remember women who are refugees. And they sold well. The 9 weavers, all of them, because economics are such a part of the violence and vulnerability that women experience. It's a part of healing. So they all had access to attorneys, and they were reunited with their husbands in Germany and Sweden. Thus, for the first 9 women, not all of them had spouses, but they found their way to family or spouses. And at one point, there was 55 women weaving. It went from 9 to 55. There was an artist named Banksy who loved what we were doing, and so he made a redesign of our design with the same women, same group. And so we went from selling them from $85 a mat to $500 a mat, and we were backed up forever. But when COVID hit, they shut down all enterprise in camps. The women weren't allowed to leave their containers. So we went to crocheting hearts in the middle of the containers. That's in their place. It was, as bad as COVID is, it's worse, when you are experiencing homelessness or in a camp. And so we moved the weaving of the mats to the newly arrived people who have received asylum in London, some in Palestine, and the whole Love Welcomes moved to the UK, and it's still growing strong, and you can see it on the website, but it's been this beautiful entryway into understanding just how resilient women are and how, you can do all these things to women, but there's so many times you just can't kill the hope, and it just makes me more hopeful. It makes me not despair. It makes me not feel like, honestly, what the hell? Because sometimes I get that way. And I don't want to live in that space. So what does that look like?
Yeah. You write, and this is just a great summary for what you just said. I've lived long enough to begin to understand that arts and crafts are revolutionary tools for healing and justice. Is that like a starting point for you? Is it a passion for you? Just given,
I love making things. I've always loved making
Yeah.
things. I love making things. I love making, I can knit, I can make candles, I can make deodorant, I can make whatever, and I have fun doing it. And when that's really old school. I mean, for women to come together and have a sewing bee, that is pretty old school. And the reason it's revolutionary is not only because a lot of the stuff has some significant economic impact, as recorded by the UN throughout the world, small artisan groups that are the backbone of some of the communities and the only thing holding more migration out of like southern Mexico, or more violence in the heart of the hills of Chile or wherever, that those groups become very, very important. But also when you're sitting around, you're not painting like Picasso, you're sitting around weaving, there's plenty of time to talk and share stories. It's very therapeutic. It's very co-parentish. It's very, like women will sit around and they'll say, if you drink this cup of moringa, all your menopause symptoms diminish. That's really good information to get. And all of a sudden, it's not 3 women, it's 10 women start drinking moringa. And it's like, okay, well, this is great. I never would have known that if I'd been sitting in my house doing the same thing by myself. So it's all those things. It's economics, it's therapeutic, it's empowerment. It's all of those things, good and bad, that we can be together and share it and thrive.
It's awesome.
And also it's boring. Some of those crafts are really boring when you do them by yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I would like to now make 150 bracelets to sell. I would like to do that in a group where we're laughing and sharing stories. I mean, I think one of the misconceptions is that this work is really hard and there's some tragedy and it must be so hard. And it's also like, we laugh all the time. There's so much joy in the midst of it too. And yesterday when we had the retreat, as soon as the women, so the 50 women gathered, we're sitting around and there's a talk and everybody's like this, but then we go to the table to make oils and you hear, you hear the buzzing and the talking and people are engaging, and I think that's the most important thing we do together.
It's great.
And it was all over body oil and people were loving it.
That's great.
Useful, practical, divine. My favorite stuff. So, do you not make stuff?
I was just recalling, I do like to make stuff, and the place of connection, maybe this is an excuse for guys to kind of do the same thing, is tying flies for fly fishing.
Yeah.
It's basically sewing for men. I don't mean to disparage that, but I mean, like, they're using thread and some little feathers. Sometimes I look at my cat and I'm like, take a fly, and that's a Gabriel fly now. And so anyway, but we're talking and sharing, and it brings people together. It's pretty interesting.
There are sewers that are men called tailors.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I do like this. I think time flies is amazing, and you have to have really pretty good eyesight too.
Yeah, I'm talking about, like, there's got to be an excuse for guys to do it.
Yes.
It's fishing.
Yes.
But there's a lot. It's for all the other reasons you just mentioned.
I know. Maybe we need to have more crafts for men. What else do men do that come together in groups and craft? I don't even know men, and I just live with men.
Probably more outside landscaping.
Oh,
stuff
I know.
Like
I
that.
was beer pong for my kids. That's
Beer
what it is.
pong. Well, Yes.
That's what they do. I just remembered. I was like, what is it? And then I was like, oh, yeah, I see them do that. And they can, yeah, that's sadly true for me. But I think my kids also, they're really good artists and painters. So they do songwriting in groups. They do painting in groups.
Yeah.
So they're kind of crafty.
Yeah, that's good.
Anyway.
You talk about imperfect perfection. And you talk about learning about Salvador Dali and the way in which his appreciation for imperfections.
Bless you.
Unique imperfections do not call us to disillusionment. They call us to revived humanity. And I'm fascinated by that. And I'll tell you where it shows up very pronounced here at Good Shepherd is for a memorial service. And I always coach the readers or anybody doing a family remembrance. I bring them up, muscle memory, walk them over here, and then I explain, here's your reading, here's where it is. And then I'll say, I just want to remind you, and you probably already know this, that this is not about perfection. If you mess up in your reading or you get emotional, it's all fine. It's all welcome here. Everybody loves your grandpa, your dad, whatever that might be, or they want to hear what you have to say. So if you're grounded in love, it will be perfect. And immediately they shift right away. They're like, it's all okay. Because the goal is not about, it's got to hit that perfect standard. The goal is like, what was the energy I brought to this? What was the attitude, whatever. And I don't know if that's what you had in mind. But I watched they'll remember that service the rest of their lives, right? So, but it plays out in other places. We keep thinking that we have to hit a certain standard. And in fact, that's kind of unrelatable.
Yeah.
Like you think of somebody who's perfect, I'm not going to go to them for counseling.
Right.
Like I need to see some cracks in your life first, and then I'll be like, oh, well, they'll understand what I'm saying, versus I'm not going to get a lecture about this. They're going to walk with me for a while.
I love that. I love the idea of just grounded in love, and the offering is good. That's a beautiful way to say it. The way that I was learning about it during COVID, so I was sitting in with my husband's a singer-songwriter in Nashville, Tennessee, and so I never was really around him doing a ton of songwriting, but we were both at the house, and then he went to Zoom for his songwriting, and they were talking about why they needed live drums, because they have an edge. Like the worst is the perfect drum with no edge. There's no edge to it anymore. Like even you can't pull it a little behind the beat or push it a little bit, or it be just a little bit enough to have a groove. If it's on a drum loop thing, it's not that interesting. That the perfection makes it less interesting, in fact. That we want that. And I just think that was a really good lesson for me to think, yeah, I want it to be live. I want it to have some spirit is more than the idea that it is perfected. And I think that's the best we can do with our lives, is that there are edges. And that's what makes us alive and real and beautiful. And, and there's all kinds of philosophies and theologies around the imperfect, perfect. And, I mean, it's a big thing, wasabi-wabi or wabi-sabi. That's the whole thing of the broken pots with the gold, beautiful leaves that are put back together. There's beautiful ways that people do it and think about it. But my favorite part of it is in this idea of the book, Practically Divine, is the idea of, like if you serve a meal and you go, oh, that's practically divine, that means almost. Your meal it's close, but it's good enough. I mean, practically divine is fine. And practically divine is the idea that it's almost and enough. And that's what I think about how we are. Almost and enough. And it gives you some freedom. It gives you acceptance about, like, this is who I am and where I am. Deal with it in a beautiful way, not in a way that doesn't mean I don't care. It means, I can't fake it like it's something else. I cannot, or I will lose myself. I used to just think sometimes, especially, honest to God, especially in the church, you don't want anybody to think you're not faithful. And so you don't say your truth sometimes, or you think, I don't want somebody to think I'm heretical, God forbid, or I mumble the creed, or whatever it is that I do. And when you get to the place where it's like, I am where I am, and I am not there yet, but I am still enough, it frees you up to think, I can have a thought, I can have a piece of poetry rise from me, and I can deem that worthy and not worry about how it is going up against what you are saying is the orthodox. Amen, Cynthia? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you take a gospel and turn it into poetry, it is the expression, I would love to hear what you have to say, but it's the expression of who you are at the truest that you are. And it was never about perfecting the truth that fits in a canon of what gospel is. And it's the best.
And it's taking your own creativity and remaking something. It's not unlike, the people making the map. It's putting that love into it and putting yourself into it, making something.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. Sorry, I have to.
That's great.
Cynthia's here. I got a call on her.
Totally, absolutely. I wonder if you all have any questions that you might want to ask that Becca. Yeah.
I do market research at Expedia. If I don't show up at work tomorrow or I screw up at work, nothing bad's going to happen in the world. No one's going to suffer. Now I can't know that. But I feel like your job must at times feel like a burden. Like if you and your team can't show up every day, like people will suffer. How do you deal with that? How do you support yourself to be able to face that every day?
And we have an amazing team, and I think the whole antidote to burnout is community, where it's not on you. And it's okay if I don't show up or whatever it is, but I also will show up if somebody else needs a break. You're there for each other and you're supporting each other. I think my whole life is self-care in a way. I drink tea in the morning. I knit when I'm on the plane. I take a walk. I love what I do. I get to read. I get to write. It's not like I'm digging ditches 12 hours a day. Some of it is emotionally very hard, and sometimes you have to be really present and unafraid in maybe the environment you're in, that it feels like an unsafe environment, whether that be on the streets or in prison or in a church. It could be any of those things. But truly, I feel like all of us, if we can just keep our daily rituals and daily practices going, the way people run marathons, what I finally figured out was they run every day. You don't even know how long that took me to realize, you have to do that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
That is, I'm only going to run them in theory. And, that's what I think a grounded, self-caring, spiritual life looks like, is you got to do it every day. There's no other way to do it. You will not run the marathon if you don't train. You may, but then it's like you may die.
Right.
And I'm not sure I'm up for that part.
No.
I don't think I could run a marathon, even maybe, do you run marathons or something?
I have.
Oh. It's so hard.
It is about that. It literally is what you just described. It's just running. But I just want to say, I think you're selling yourself here. To be consistent over time. Not just like, hey, we had a great craft and it brought these women together, but consistently over time and over the years to continue to be such a healing place. And I recognize it's not all about you, but you set a tone. It could go in lots of different directions. You are to be greatly applauded for the consistency of, I'm going to use a perfection term, excellence that has come through your ministry.
Thank you.
And that's not easy. Maybe a joy, but it's not easy.
Sometimes, what we talked about yesterday a lot in the workshop, and then we'll close because I know people got places and brunches to go to, is that it made a big difference in my life where I quit worrying about if I was inspired. You just keep doing the work and trust that inspiration will come back. But I think that's the thing that makes it really hard is when people think in your spiritual life you have to be inspired all the time. I don't know anybody inspired all the time. I've never read anybody inspired all the time. I've never, it just doesn't happen. And again, it's my husband in his songwriting. He gets up every day and starts to compose. Is there a new song? Is there a new melody? Did the muse stop by? Probably not. But he sits there and is ready for when it does happen. He's ready to greet it he sounds like he's doing chants on this piano scales he does, and he does old melodies. He does, old songs that he loves, and he just plays, and he gets into this space. And it's not that he's inspired to do it. He does it. Mm-hmm. And that's how, you become a Hall of Fame songwriter.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I think, I will say the biggest sacrifice I made was probably coming here. My husband and his co-writer, Jeff Hanna, who is the lead singer of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and his wife are all in Sundance this weekend. We were invited for Sundance for the weekend, and I was like, I can't go. No, I'm teasing. It wasn't. I love being here. But I do think, it pays off. Sometimes you get to go to Sundance for the weekend,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Not very often, but sometimes. But y'all are been so kind to us. I'm hopeful that we didn't have to ship much back. Do you know? Oh, good. Did you buy, I asked you to?
I have not yet.
Did they already pack it up? We'll go check, because I told him that it'd be really great for Lent for him to buy something for every staff member, because churches are experiencing great turnover after COVID because everybody's burnt out. And because he's new, he might want to endear y'all to him. See, everybody wants you to.
I agree. This is why you're good at what you do.
Because I think of you guys. Think of y'all. You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing yourself with us. Really appreciate it. We will. You have impacted us in ways that you will never know, and we will continue to be in touch. And that relationship you spoke about this morning, that will continue, and we will celebrate everything that happens through your ministry.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
You're welcome. Thank you.